Max Gorlin, Melbourne Football Club. You're listening to the Coaches Panel.
This is Nat Fyfe from the Fremantle Footy Club.
Trent Cotchin from the Richmond Footy Club.
Scott Pendlebury from the Collingwood Football Club. You're listening to the Coaches Panel.
Patrick Cooch from the Carlton Footy Club.
It's Rory Sloane here from the Adelaide Crows.
This is Tom Mitchell. You're listening to the Coaches Panel.
Hey friends, it's MJ from the Coaches Panel. I hope you're well and welcome back to another SuperCoach strategy episode where we talk you through all the big decisions, dilemmas and discussion points that you have heading into another round of SuperCoach. We're heading into round 14 in the back half of the season well and truly now, and some important parts of our seasons really are hinging on the decisions we make over the next fortnight. The trade decisions you make with upgrades and downgrades can very, very quickly determine whether or not your team is successful in leagues, successful in rankings, successful in personal bests, or whether you find yourself slipping and drifting just a little bit further and further away from where ideally you'd like to sit yourself in your 2024 SuperCoach season. So a reminder for us, we're well and truly in the midst of the buys. The two teams unavailable to us last week in Port Adelaide and also Fremantle are now, they join the Sydney clubs, they join Brisbane and they join North Melbourne as teams that are buy free for us for the remainder of the season. While we then have the other 12 AFL teams, 6 this week, 6 next week, who still have their buys. If you're not sure who's off this week, the beauty is with SuperCoach, gives you that little blue dot sort of in the top right-hand part of their profile. It makes it really, really easy for you to see which are the teams and are not. And then if you've got any of the gold features, it's even more curated and easy for you. The beauty of those blue dots, a reminder, just to help you out, is you can put your C on them really, really easily to be able to loop your VC score if you're happy with it, as well as our options you can trade out at any time during the round up until that final game kicks off in lockout, and then they are locked away for you and you can't adjust them. So you do have a fairly full component of the weekend to be able to consider who those players and prospects are that are available to you. So that's a really, really good sign of how it's going to work for us. Who are we trading into? That's a really great question. Do we want to start at the upgrades or do we want to start at the downgrades? I think for me, I think we always kind of look at the upgrades a little bit at this component and time of the season. I use upgrades loosely because there's a couple that are in there that you might not have for the totality of the season, but they're there for you nonetheless. A reminder, because you're in buys too, don't forget, you can use upwards of 4 trades a week if you do have some boosts available to you. No boosts, you can still hit 3 trades for you, no problem. And if you're looking for a guide to know where you should be sitting with trades remaining, well, it partially depends what your priority is. Is it leagues or is it ranks? But then it also sits in part with how many rookies do you still have sitting in your side and players that you're happy to loop through at D6, D7, M8, M9, F6, F7, those kind of elements. But for the most part, I think coaches, if not this week, certainly after the moves you make at the heading into round 15, you should be, if not knocking on the door, tipped over into single digit trades if you've been forcefully upgrading your team to the cadence that kind of keeps you up with the rest of the pack anyway. So who are we going to talk about? Let's look at the upgrades, the downgrades. There are a few good options, but let's look at the upgrades that people could be considering, and I'll give you my take on them. First up, in the defensive line, you've got a Jordan Clark sitting at that $580,000. He's got a really nice average and a 3-round rolling average where his lowest score is a 127. His peak score is a 151. From a price perspective, he does look really inviting for us at the moment, but these 3 weeks have arguably been the best 3 weeks of scoring of his SuperCoach career. And for me, while I'm all in for trading into guys that are on a hot stretch, I do feel like this is partially quite unsustainable for the next little while. While there's a couple of nice matchup games that sit through there, there's also some games I'm a little intrigued and concerned about. One of those is in 3 weeks' time against the Swans. We've seen James Jordan play a tagging role on a variety of different types of defenders, both the interceptor, we saw that against Tom Stewart just last week, and also then the run and carry distribution ball user. And we've seen that with players like a Lockie Whitfield. And Jordan really is hamstringing our premiums incredibly well. And so I'm not super keen for one reason because of the buy. It's gone. Yep, great. One of the things I'm a little bit intrigued about is who does that tag go to in a couple of weeks' time. It's either him or Ryan, absolutely. The other element is, what does a Brennan Cox doing come back into this side do? It's not so much the identical players, but just a shift in that dynamic of that back line. And again, as much as he's in career high form at the moment, I'm paying a lot of salary cap at the moment for a guy that up until the past 3 weeks has been a great starting selection. But you're not trading into a guy for what he's been. You're trading into a guy for what he's about to do. And I don't forecast him to go 105 plus for the rest of the year from here. I think he's sort of a 95 to 100 guy that can pop a big ceiling, but there's just far too many variables for me to advocate with confidence that I would be trading into Jordan Clark. I know others are a little bit different about that, and they're very, very happy and very, very content to absolutely suggest go, go, go. I don't sit in that camp. For me, I'm not really happy to do that. I'd much rather go into his teammate. Granted, who's nearly 100,000 more at 666,700. But Luke, while clearly in career high, going at 129, what you've actually seen, even over these last 3 weeks, is he's pretty much hitting in and around his numbers anyway. The Bulldogs is a pretty reasonable matchup for him. He too has the Swans, much like his teammate. What a coincidence, in a few weeks' time, which could be quite a challenging matchup. But to me, I'm happier on the balance of probabilities, of the balance of what he's done over his career, to just trust Ryan scoring that little bit more. You're clearly paying for it, but it's there. If for nothing else, you're neutralizing the defender that's taking the season away from you, quote unquote. So if I had money to just absolutely burn in my back line, and I'm worried that there's one player that's popular in ownership that I don't have, Ryan probably sits into that category. Now, can you go and get some cheaper prospects that will score comparable to him? Look, maybe not, but you might be able to make it up over a multitude of trade upgrades rather than just a singular like for like. So I'm very, very comfortable and happy to advocate for trading into a Luke Ryan. He's clearly at peak price as far as I'm concerned, but he's now showing year on year on year that he's one of, if not the best defender for us in SuperCoach this year. He's been a very, very good performer over previous years. I know Brennan Cox is coming back, but I don't see the level of that adjusting to him too much. If I'm picking one Freo defender, I'm picking Luke over Jordan, that's for sure. Got to talk about Zach Fisher next. I know he's not one of the two teams that's coming off the bye, but he's still a prospect that I think we should be considering, given that he is off the bye. And again, if you're struggling to have a little bit of cash flow, you're not really happy with what your F6, D5, D6, F5, that kind of spot looks like, Fisher provides great versatility. And although his teammate in Dawson is out for the foreseeable future, is why I was quite comfortable advocating for Dawson as a trade-in a few weeks ago, and last week especially, was he just provides you that element of positional versatility where you can make movements to your squad. Him, Sexton, Comben, Buku Karmas, if you're still rolling around with him, amongst others, that you can make those kind of moves. But for 140,000 difference, you're not getting a crazy gap at this stage with Fisher in contrast to Ryan. So I understand why, and probably would agree with the sentiment that you're getting Fisher over Ryan. 3 scores. In fact, I think his last 5 weeks have been excellent. Nothing over 113 in his last 3. Still priced at value based on what he's delivering. The only little flag I'll wave for him is McKercher could be back as early as next week, maybe another week after that. And I do forecast that Clarko and North Melbourne in general will continue to move the player magnets around just that little bit over these remaining 10 to 12 games as they continue to learn, look, and see. And what we know about Fisher is when he's sharing this distribution role, whether it be with McKercher, with Sheasel, or another, he's okay as a scorer. But when he's got the monopoly like he has the past 5 weeks, he's a top liner in this spot, much as Sheasel had been previously this year and the year gone, and also Hall and Zeeble had been. So if he's going to maintain the monopoly, gosh, it's going to be hard not to justify getting him. Last week, he was cheaper. This week probably feels like the last week I'd feel comfortable trading into him, knowing what could be coming in the future with some potential player movements in and some positional volatility that might come his way. And absolutely not a certainty, but it might come his way. So for me, that would just be something to consider. If you stay in the defensive line and you don't own a Harry Sheasel, even this move to the midfield for him and a little bit more fluid and less stable positional scoring, he's still scoring well enough. You look at these last three scores, he's still in the ballpark, if not going better in some spaces than what he's done over the season. So he's got high ownership. It's not an attacking move, but again, depending on if you're league or rankings focused, if he sits in that pocket for you as someone you don't own, and you can't quite justify the extra $100,000 up to Ryan for whatever reason, yeah, this is arguably equally as a defensive approach. And sometimes a defensive approach is absolutely okay. There's nothing wrong with neutralizing the guy that's been hurting you and hoping that your other unique components in your side get you there. There has been a lot of damage done, and you are arguably paying now practically premium price for what he is, but at under 100,000 cheaper. Is there a 20 to 30 point jump week on week between Sheasel and Ryan? No, I don't think so. I think they're both going to be good for the year. Ryan will be the better performer as far as I'm concerned, unless Sheasel goes back to the primary ball user off halfback, which would feel like a regression for this Kangaroo side. So to me, he's absolutely someone you can consider if you don't own him. The other defender that's probably in the mix is the Dan Houston. He's got a fantastic ceiling up at that 148. A bit of a tougher matchup this week against the Giants, but he's at a good price point too. So if you're looking for some uniqueness, maybe you're already a Sheasel owner for a moment, can't afford to go up to Ryan, don't trust Clark, because much like I don't, and you're already a Fisher owner, but defense is where you've got that gap. This is absolutely someone you can address. He's got ceiling for days, while his break even means he will drop in price a little bit. You're probably reason you're getting into it now is the player performances and moves that you've got available to you, but also you're eyeing that St Kilda matchup in a couple of weeks' time, and that's why you're kind of heavily targeting that. We've seen what the Gold Coast Suns and other teams have done over recent weeks, where Zorko owners are eagerly anticipating this matchup on Friday. So for me, that could also be someone to look at. If we head into the midfield, at just under 630K is Caleb Sarong, got a monster break even, so I couldn't advocate for getting into him this week. That said, he's got a pretty good history against the Bulldogs of late in Supercoach, but at 176 break even, it's probably someone you're looking to get into in the next couple of weeks. And as brilliant as he's been, he's not as strong over these last 3 to 5 weeks as he was over the 5 weeks prior. So when you've got guys like a Connor Rosie that could be bargain basement cheap, and we'll talk about him soon, you've got a Tom Green who's a bargain basement price. Now, none of these guys have set the season on fire, certainly over the past 2 months, both for different reasons, both injury related, but different reasons. It is hard to lose too much sight of the value we've got. But again, I wouldn't be getting Sarong this week, but absolutely could see why he would be appealing to coaches. I feel like once they get through these next 3 weeks, the fixture really opens up even more so for Fremantle. So maybe that might be the case, that you navigate your way through the buys. I'd expect Rowbottom to run with him in that Swans matchup in a few weeks' time. Rao might make it a bit physical for him at stoppage. I still think it'd be good. I still see him going 110 to 120 over the next 3 weeks comfortably, but with a break even of 176, it's just too much. Connor Rosie is about to become one of the biggest bargains we've got in Supercoach before. Now, it's the other formats, he's a little bit better in scoring. He's not like his teammate in Zach Butters, where his physicality in and around the ball isn't as rewarded, rather his poise and class and ability to get into space, while a valuable part of Supercoach scoring. He doesn't have all the other dynamics that Zach does, but still, with a break even of 182, he's going to plummet in price, and really could be down as low as 400,000 or less in a fortnight's time. And so for me, he's kind of someone, as I look at that St Kilda matchup in a few weeks' time, I'm very, very interested in. The past 3 weeks have been disastrous, but all 3 of them have been injury impacted scores. And so to me, you can't hold those elements linked to that. He's not a 110 guy. Rather, I think he's sort of a 105 option. But as an M8, M9 floater or as a 23rd premium, I'm really comfortable with that. For example, if you're happy to hold Clayton Oliver, which I understand the trade in and the trade out, I also understand the justification for why you'd hold.
Ryan Reynolds here for, I guess, my 100th Mint commercial. No. I mean, honestly, when I started this, I thought I only have to do like 4 of these. I mean, it's unlimited premium wireless for $15 a month. How are there still people paying 2 or 3 times that much? I'm sorry, I shouldn't be victim blaming here. Give it a try at mintmobile.com/save. Whenever you're ready.
$45 upfront payment equivalent to $15 per month. New customers on first 3-month plan only. Taxes and fees extra. Speed slower above 40 gigabytes. See details.
If you want to flip a Rosie and a Oliver or a Rosie and a Green at M8, M9 and just play the matchups for the next 10 weeks, well, 8 weeks, because I couldn't get into Rosie now, I'm really quite comfortable with that because those first 5 weeks, he was flying for us. And that's really what he's going to be if he can get back to what he was doing pre-hamstring injury. Tom Green in a similar sort of space. Gosh, he's going to keep dropping in price, many would argue. Port Adelaide's not the easiest matchup, but that's often where Tom thrives, isn't it? Those tight, contested games of football. And the 3 teams he's got coming up over the next 3 weeks in Port Adelaide, Sydney, Adelaide, all thrive on the contest. So to me, I think he's well and truly underpriced, even with a really poor last 3 weeks. He's still got an average that's in the triple figures, and on any given week, he could score a 150 on any opposition. He's not in form, but he is incredible value. And sometimes you just need to accept the gift that is in front of you. I know others aren't as bullish on Tom being a great value buy, but for me, you've got someone who I think he was going like 130, 140 over the first 3 or 4 weeks of a season. I know it's a very small block of time, but you roll that alongside what he did last year, and you take the injury impacted game out, man, he's already up to that 110 average, even with a poor 3 weeks and a couple of tags sitting in there. So I'm really quite comfortable. He looked good last week. He just got beaten in the second half. He's got to learn to keep fighting through these tags. I think from a risk component, it's pretty low based on the price. And as I said, if you can pair him with a Rosie out of the buys, I feel like that's a really powerful 22nd, 23rd premium of fixtures and using a bunch of options. So for me, I'm still quite bullish on him. If you want to go up to the top of the tree, Zach Butters is there. His break even means it shouldn't be this week. But again, I can understand why people would want to do it, given there's some good matchups that are rolling through there. He does have ceiling. Even on his bad games, he limps to a high 90s score. So I understand the appeal about Zach. But as I've mentioned, you've got 150,000 cheaper a Tom Green who on his day can match Zach. That 150K could do a lot for you, both in either an upgrade from a player that's on the buy this week that you might want to move on, such as an Ollie Dempsey, or even if you're looking to get off a dead Rook to be able to keep some cash generation movement or some scoring options moving. That's probably a better utility of your cash. But again, I understand the appeal about Zach. He's an absolute animal in SuperCoach, and definitely someone you're happy to own. The other mid I think people are strongly considering is an Errol Goulden at 560,000. He's had a great past 2 weeks, 130 plus score, 150 plus score. Adelaide this week have traditionally been a little bit of a harder matchup, but the past 2 weeks they have been a shell of what they'd looked like they were coming back to being, which was what they were in 2023. So I suppose the question of trading into Errol this week, while he's going to make money, that doesn't really matter now because you're trading into Errol at this price point to be a top line premier from now to the end of the season. So the question I'd ask you if you're looking at Errol is, at 560K, what does he need to do that a Green can't do for you at 100,000 cheaper? again, I keep coming back to Green, and it makes it sound like I'm bullish on him, and I am. But the reason I keep coming back to Green is that 100,000 differential. You add that on top of another one of your moves, that is now a combination and pairing that you're trying to contrast rather than just a 1-for-1. And that is where it does start to matter quite significantly. Look, I think Errol's a 110 guy from now to the end of the year, which is pretty much what he's priced at. He's about to jump up towards 600K in the next couple of weeks, and another 130, 150 will really have him sailing well into the 630, 650 range. But to me, I'd probably look elsewhere. I understand the appeal this week. For me, I just like other options, just that little bit more. I've thrown LDU in the mix too. He's someone to consider, just under 600,000. Break even, where he's pretty much sitting at the space where he's topped out in price now. But his past 5 weeks has been excellent, and his final month of the year is incredible. And so if you believe he can storm home this season, much like he has the previous two, and go on a run of sort of 125 plus, then it's value. Again, I think I like other options cheaper. He was out of the midfield a little bit more this week, making way in part for a little bit of Powell and a little bit of Simpkin. So maybe you just want to see that sort of midfield unit settle a little bit. But they've got a really good matchup this week against Collingwood, who still are lacking depth in that midfield. Melbourne, who are lacking arguably their best midfielder now for probably the year in Petrarca as well. So I don't mind it. I understand why you would do it. It does feel like you're probably paying overs when you've got Goulden 30K cheaper. You've got Green, who's 140K cheaper. And then in a fortnight's time, you're going to have Rosie under 400K or right on 400K. So to me, there's probably better ways of using your salary cap, but he's well and truly back into doing what he was. I know I said it's the last one, but we do need to mention Lachie Neale off the back of that 130 last week, just a fortnight removed from games played, not from actual games, from that 162. He's well and truly back. He's now at his peak price, but he's absolutely someone that for pretty much the moment he walked into the Lions' den, he's been a top 5 SuperCoach premium mid. And if you want to pay top dollar, he's your guy. If you want to pay top dollar to get some consistency and reliability and stability, I understand it. I wouldn't do it this week. And the primary reason is the Marcus Windhager tag. And history would say Neale, when he gets really muzzled, attention like that, doesn't score great. He's shown at times he can work through the tag, absolutely. But history would say it generally impacts his scoring ceiling a little bit. And if you're paying 635K, you can't afford to get a 90 or even a flat ton this week. In a couple of weeks' time, does an Alex Neil-Bullen go to him? He did a great job on Dacos just this last weekend. Does a Willem Drew go to him next week? The matchups for the next 3 weeks don't lend itself to me to be bullish on Neale. Last week, it was good. You could get that pop score, a little bit of value, and away you go. To me, all the variables are aligning to maybe say that he's probably not the right pick for you. I don't think many coaches are looking for a ruckman this week, but if you are, probably the only one I'd consider pushing for would be a ruck forward option for you. I know Cherry's there and Grundy's there and both should score well, but I don't think anyone's really trading into a ruck. But if you want something that could work in the rucks, Luke Jackson would probably be the one. A lot of volatility in scoring. Even in the last 3, there's like 90 points between his best and his worst, and he does have a little bit of cash still to leak back to us, but he's going 101 at the moment. And I still expect Darcy to miss 2 to 3 games for the rest of the year. That's what history would tell me he's going to be able to do. And even just what he did the week before the bye against Melbourne, he impacted a couple of goals, was really good around the ground and hit that high 90s. If you're already a Zorko owner, Heaney owner, Flanders owner, Fisher owner, and you're kind of going, what do I like? Jackson could be really, really helpful, especially, we'll talk about downgrades in a sec, if you're looking at a Nathan Kruger type and or you already own a Heath, a Barnett, I think Livingston's the other West Coast Eagle, ruck forward to just open up that loop and again, create more depth of available options on field while not costing yourself trades. We're going to get to that point in the year. If you haven't got there already, it's coming where you are wanting to trade into guys to build depth on your squad, not just bench hygiene for cash generation, but bench hygiene so that precious trades will start to become now for longer and season-long injuries, not just he's missing 2 weeks, I can ship him off. You need to start soon, being a bit more conservative with your moves, and DPP like a Jackson, while he might pop you the odd 70 or 80, he's also got 150 ceilings within him when he's the number one ruck, and he still can hit the ton comfortably when he's playing forward as well in that. So to me, I still think he's a prospect. It's not this week, but I still think he's a really nice prospect. The other 2 players I want to put on the table for you to consider is Dane Zorko. Everything about his break even says don't do it this week. But what I like about Dane is nearly 600K. Don't like the price tag, and the 187 break even I don't love either. But what I love is the matchup this week. Is we know that he can hit 150s, 160s, and he's taken seasons away from coaches already at the moment. And so I like Dane as a prospect. I probably wouldn't do it this week, just if you're thinking about dollars. But if you don't care about the money and all you care about is the score, then 1,000% get into Zorko, because St Kilda are comfortable to give as many marks and as much possession and as much disposal to opposition teams in the defensive half of the ground. And Zorko dominates in that space. I think it was 5 or 6 Suns players just last week alone had double-figure marks. And Zorko's ability to run and carry and link up is even more desperate than Sam Flanders, whose is pretty high and scored, I think it's what was a 150 something for us last week in SuperCoach. So I definitely have Zorko penciled in to be in that range. You are overpaying for him, undoubtedly, but you're paying for the expectation of the score this week. That's what you're pushing for and nothing else. You're wanting the big pop score this week, and you're justifying it by knowing he's the forward you don't have that could take the rest of the season away from you. Sometimes while value is important and critical, and we've talked about that with the midfielders of don't overpay, the difference is outside of Flanders, Heaney, and probably Fisher, he's the only other guy that's got the potential at the moment to really run away from you. So I'm very, very comfortable paying the almost 600K to get Zorko, but it would be with the premise that he's your VC this week and knowing that he's going to drop value. And I'm quite okay with that. I'm absolutely okay with that. And the reason I'm okay with that is we've still got such great value around at the moment. I've mentioned Rosie and a fortnight. Green's still sitting in there. Fisher, I think, is still value for this week alone. Jackson, I still think, is a decent pick. And then you've got a guy in Jai Simpkin that I think is really worthy of a conversation. 361,900. The average isn't pretty, but a lot of those have some concussion impacts and not a inside centre bounce midfield role. They've clearly been conservative with him, both how they use him and just building him up in confidence in his body to be able to do it. And he had the most centre bounces he's had all year on the weekend, and it resulted in a monster score of 129. Now, he's got a history of being a 90 sort of guy in SuperCoach when he sits in that midfield role. And I don't see any reason why they would change that. It was so successful for them. Yeah, they only beat West Coast, but this is one of the 3 or 4 teams that I think North Melbourne fans and coaching staff anticipated that they could win and should be competitive against. So why would they change that up would be my push to that. But the reason you're looking at Simpkin isn't just because he's undeniable value, is because now that he's got mid-forward status, he can become the 23rd, 24th premium in your team. A player like Fisher can cover your defensive line at D6 if required, if you've got a Dawson or a Comburn or a Karmas rolling through there. You look at that rosy green style combination at M8, M9. Okay, now you've got fixtures and loops and value getting you there. I think Simpkin is the kind of guy that could do that for you too at F6, M8, if you ever got stuck with multi injuries. To me, he's just the kind of guy that if he ends up sticking on your field over the next 10 weeks, happy days. But if he just becomes the guy you go to in case you get a 1 week injury or suspension, okay. I've got Simpkin, who's shown, not just in one isolated matchup, but has shown over his career when he can get himself physically right, he can score what we would say in 2024 in the forward lines, even though he was playing in the mids, premium areas of scoring and under 370K. So to me, I think he's absolutely warranted to be a consideration this week. And the more weeks you wait and think and hope on it, the more and more the risk profile elevates, not only with injuries, but the lack of value that's sitting there. So to me, it's very much, I'd be driving if you are considering it. It's a this week play. And as every week of the buys and his price and the injury variable only goes up based on history, not on hoped expectation, of course.
You know when you reach that age where everyone and their mother won't shut up about their credit scores, yet it seems like no one really understands what's so special about those 3 random numbers? That's because credit scores are meaningless, unless you have Credit Karma to show you how to use them. We use those 3 random numbers, plus your financial profile, to help you find your next opportunity. Like a more rewarding credit card, a game plan that helps you pay down debt faster, or a personal loan to help you save more on interest payments each month. Cha-ching! Download Intuit Credit Karma today to get started.
I just couldn't justify going into it. So to me, I feel like Simpkins a now or never kind of move, and I'm comfortable to do it as a now move too. I have no problem with doing it. So those are the upgrades, and the mini upgrades, I think, are the ones that we should be considering the most. Who and how are we getting money? It's a good question. I think I've got like 5 downgrade prospects for us to consider. None of them are amazing, but I think they could be. A couple of them could be. I'll lead us off with Billy Dowling. He had a reasonably good debut for the Crows, solid score, still going to be available at his basement price after the buy. So it's not with urgency that you've got to do it this week by any means. But with Matt Crouch out for the year and given his performance, I would be baffled if on Thursday night he's left out of the squad. I still think he's a sub risk, both red and green, every given week. We've seen the Crows are happy to give their kids the vest. Curtin has only ever played with a vest. Nankervis, I believe, this year from memory has played with a vest. So I think Billy's right in the mix for copping that as well. And so absolutely not someone that I think is an essential. You must absolutely go. But he's there. He's in the mix. You can wait a fortnight, given the Crows have the bye next week. But he barring injury, will play. Or suspension, obviously. So if you're like, nah, I just need the money now. Maybe you're jumping off a Dempsey, for example. Yeah, I just got to get off him now. Okay, happy for you to do that with Billy because he will play. You can wait. I don't think I'd want him on field for anything outside of buys. Ideally, that's where a Simpkin, Greens, Rosies, Olivers, even in the back line, I don't hate a Jaden Short as a bench option deep if you're just trying to get 25 premiums, depending on what you're trying to do with your team. That's fine to me. But yeah, Billy Dowling, I think, is a reasonable pick. Ari Schoenmaker's confirmed to debut from the club. Again, I think we might have better prospects, given you should be able to move some DPP around. And my only concern with trading into him is who's the defender that's making way? Is it a Bonner? This is being recorded before Thursday night teams. Is a Nazaya Wanganeen Miller or Sinclair being managed with injuries, for example? Like, who's the distributor that's coming out of this defensive line? Because there's always got some height about him. It's his one wood is his kicking. And so who's the ball user that's not there this weekend? So I don't think it's a SuperCoach rush move. But again, if you've got a Blake Howes, for example, and you're not confident he's going to get back into the side after the bye, and you're like, man, I've got a red dot, or blue this week, but a red dot not making money. I might as well go and get this red one. Okay, I'm fine with that, and I'm confident for you to go and do that. If that's the premise, I'd rather wait till after the bye and see it. But I can again understand why you might be interested. I'd rather upgrade around him rather than use him as the downgrade, if that makes sense. So if I was a house owner, I was moving off someone this week, whether it be a Bonner in the back line, I'd rather go up from them rather than down, if that makes sense. Last three, really, really quickly, as one ripping option that I think is still to come. Toby McMullen, my biggest concern is he's a sub. But again, if you want a guy that feels like he's around that best 25 area of the team, I know they've still got a couple of players that are out injured, a couple that look like they could be back as early as this week, but he's been in and around the ecosystem of that best 25. He's there. He's very vesty, green and red, but he's still got a negative break even. And if he's named this week, yeah, I kind of get it. I'd probably rather get onto Billy Dowling, just personally save that extra 30K, who's probably got a touch more job security than Toby, but I can understand why you'd look at it. Probably the best option that feels like sitting to me, who again will be available for you in a fortnight's time, is Nathan Kruger. That 76 was really impressive on the weekend. The reason I do it this week is because of the matchup is really quite favorable and friendly. I think he could really pop another 80 plus score for us and kick another couple of goals. I think he's going to sit in that team for the next couple of weeks while Mason Cox is out. I thought he played that ruck forward role quite well. And Collingwood looked good with him in that spot. So I just like him again. Maybe you've got a Jackson and it's just going to open up that dual position link. Maybe, again, you're a Heath owner and you're going to put a player in Kruger that at least for 3 or 4 weeks might play and be some important cash later in the season. Sure. But to me, he's probably the one that if I was downgrading to someone this week at under 150,000 that I needed on field, that I'd hoped could get into my 18, and it looks like they're going to get a good couple of weeks of opportunity, Nathan's the one. And then the last one is a Kieran Strawn. Again, I'd rather wait till after the bye with Kieran. Groin issue is a little alarming that he tightened up a little bit on his first full AFL game. He will have a favourable break even if he's named this week and plays again. It'll be quite a favourable break even if he gets through the game. I thought he looked okay, but he certainly wasn't incredible. So to me, Kieran Strawn, I think, is a play. But if I was trading into any ruck, I'd rather go for Kruger this week because of A, DPP, B, I think he's got a little bit more job security, and C, I think he's got a better scoring prospect this week. As good as Kieran could be, Grundy's not an easy matchup. So for me, I'd probably be a little bit more hesitant. And that's my thoughts this week on SuperCoach, your upgrades, your downgrades, and some moves you could make along the way. If you're watching this on YouTube, hey, thank you for doing so. But we'd love to know your thoughts. Who are you trading into this week? You can comment below and let me know. If you haven't subscribed to the channel yet, it's not too late. You can still do that. And then if you're listening to this audio podcast, make sure you leave it a 5-star rating and review. And you can always join our Patreon supporter group. There's a ton of great exclusive rewards they are getting year-round, pre-season, post-season, and all season long. If you'd love to join our Patreon supporter group, all the details are in the description of this podcast episode. Hey, thanks so much for tuning in. We can't wait to be back with you again next week talking all things SuperCoach.